What you are about to see will be the first presentation ever, revealing the true ancestry of the Tudor family. And I guarantee you will not find this information from any historian known in the present or past. You may never look at English royalty the same way again. Or French, Scots, Irish, or Welsh for that matter. Hopefully the research I'm doing will add to the conversation started by other well-researched content creators on YouTube and published scholars who focus on Scottish and Irish Black lineage of the British Isles. At the time of writing this, I have mapped out my findings on both the House of Lancaster and the House of York, with truly surprising results. I'm excited by what I've discovered but also quite overwhelmed because of the implications. These discoveries are based on source material, gold coins, original statues, root words, and verified translations. So let's get straight into it. Let's do a recap on the genealogy of the Tudors. Historians state that the Tudors were Welsh, but it is probable there may have been some Cornish origin, with ancient tales of Arthurian legend in both regions. They were a Celtic Brittonic Aboriginal family of the Welsh royal house of Gwynedd. The kingdom of Gwynedd was ruled by Cyneda Wldig. I'm going to omit Wldig for this occasion as it just means rural. Cyneda is actually the same as Gwynedd, which seems to be a later variant of the spelling. Gwynedd. Cyned. The house of Gwynedd claimed descent from the mythical king Beli Ma. Beli means white and is thought to come from Belgi, Belgium, and the Isle of Wight. Ma means great. Or, as I am inclined to interpret, more, because the U's and W's are interchangeable. We know this as Tudor is also spelled Tudor. In Welsh, Gwyn means white. In New York Norse, an ancient language of Norse from which knights come from, Edda yields no translation. Many scholars think that it means elder. Wikipedia states that the name Cyneda was spelled Cundag in the Pseudo-History Historia Brittonum AD 828. So that's where I am going to be looking. What is the origin of the root word cun? Cun in Welsh, attractive, chief, leader. Although on searching the word cun, a list of mostly Chinese terms showed. This would imply that Edag is a separate part of the name. While using the translator, the language Tedaga appeared in the list, although upon search, showed no meaning for Edag. Tedaga is a Nile language of Libya, so could I be close? And then I googled Edag. Down at the bottom is a direct reference to a town in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Edag Arbai, known for its monastery. I found that Edag means high or above. In Chinese Buddhism, one of the translations for kun was village, like we English would say tun for village, and I would suggest this is the meaning in this context, the high village at the top of the mountain. Cundag gives us a clue to the origin of the kingdom of Gwynedd. The name Tudor comes from Tudorhen, who was son of Goronwy, son of Ednifed Fikin. Ednifed Fikin was a Welsh nobleman who became seneschal of the kingdom of Gwynedd in North Wales. Here is his armor. The descendants of Ednifed were called the Wirion of Eden. Wirion means grandchild's, grandsons. So that's interesting, the grandsons of Eden. If we split Eden from Ift, what are these words? Eden in Welsh means bird. Ift in Welsh means drink. Fikin in Welsh means small. Faika in Swahili means clear land. Small bird drinking in Welsh. Eden is a city at the tip of Yemen, which is near and opposite to the port of Djibouti, Ethiopia. Ift could be Fide, which means abundant in Egyptian. So we have Eden, abundant, clear land. What are the chances that the word Edag and Eden are both found here, almost next to each other in Ethiopia? Did a king of Ethiopia settle land in Wales? Penrhyn Castle in North Wales, constructed in the style of a Norman castle, was founded by Ednifed Fikin. Why are there only 2 sentences on Wikipedia about this ownership of land? The castle has a beautiful interior and architectural elements such as these round arches with zigzag pattern. The National Trust claims it to be Romanesque Revival architecture and opened in 1820. If this is a Norman castle, it is obviously far older. This is the Roman temple at Meroe in Sudan, showing similar arches. The article, A New Theory, European cathedrals show traces of ancient Egypt. What zigzags teach us about how art and architecture borrow and change through cultural interactions. Durham Cathedral, built by Britain's Norman conquerors between 1093 and 1128, is covered in zigzags. Recently voted the best building in the world by a panel of 50 architectural experts. It was the UK's first cathedral to be inscribed on UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites, internationally recognized as a Romanesque masterpiece. Why do zigzags occur here for the first time in England and in such profusion? Art historians rarely ask such questions. They simply accept it as a given that the Normans invented the zigzag pattern and look no further. Why does knowing where the zigzag came from matter? Its importance, in my view, stems from its role in challenging a term like Romanesque, only coined in France in the 19th century, a term which implies a European origin of styles, patterns, and techniques, even though many typical Romanesque features began their life far from Rome. Ednifed established a ministerial dynasty which would serve the princes of Gwynedd for 30 years after his death until the Edwardian conquest. He had a child with a woman named Tang Whistle, which I translated literally as Chinese hostage, and another with Gwenllian, which I translated literally as white cloth. The child with Tang Whistle was named Tuda. The child with Gwenllian was named Goronwy. Goronwy established the branch of the Tudor family of Penmanid, Anglesey. Goron also happens to be a word found in Somali. Y in Welsh means egg, and if you've watched my videos on the meaning of Y, you'll know I've spent time on this. Goronio in Somali is a word meaning ostrich. Could Goronwy mean ostrich egg? Also, ostrich feathers are an emblem of the princes and kings of Wales. Goronwy then had a son who he named Tuda Hen, literally Old Tuda or Elder. Goronwy died in 1268, succeeded by his half-brother, the other Tuda, from the union with the Chinese hostage. He succeeded him in office for 10 years. Tuda Hen married into the South Kingdom of Wales, the Kingdom of Deheubarth. Tuda Hen's son was Meredith. Meredith's son was Owain Tudor. Owain from Old Welsh Uwain. Interestingly, I typed Uwain in Mauritian translation and it returned no I's. Mauritian is Mauritian language of the Indian Ocean, and Meridu is an Indian word. Then I found that Meredith, as a literal translation in Welsh, is Black Sea. Because we know here in this community that Du means black. Mar means of the sea. Was Meredith a man with Asian eyes from the Black Sea region? At the beginning I mentioned that the name Tudor may have origin in Cornwall. Tudor was a tyrannical king associated with the persecution of the early saints of Cornwall and Wales. The translation is Theodore the Great, or Great Tudor. But as I said before, I would suggest that Mar is more. Here you can see the king on the right being tortured. In a play that was written about these sagas, the Duke of Brittany is portrayed as a hero fighting to save Cornwall from the evil King Tudor, and Saint Mariasek is portrayed as resisting King Tudor's bad government. Mariasek is an Egyptian name. Tudor is how it is spelt in Cornwall, almost exactly the same as it is spelt in Swahili. To ordain. Dar, house. Similarly, we find it in Urdu. To select, appoint. Dara, possessor, sovereign. There is also Tutorix, literally people king. Tut may come from Teutonic, a Germanic or Celtic tribe. The Teutons were said to go into a mad, merciless, berserk rage in battle. Rix, meaning king, is specifically Gaulish. And I've said before that Gaul is actually the same as Gaul, Gallic. Another attempt to muddle the truth about the origins of the ancient French population. Gallia Celtica. I wanted to know the meaning of Gaul, so I typed it into my favorite translator. I don't know how many times I have been excited by the resulting word over this past year of research. In French, Gala returns the result Aramo, which is Ethiopian. It's an Ethiopian tribe. Gallant also means standing stone. Think gallant knights. There are standing stones in Ethiopia the same as the ones in Brittany, in the Tigray region. Is it just a coincidence that the Cornish blue and white stripe is also worn by the Ethiopians? Could it be that the early saints of Cornwall and Wales were from the Lower Nile region? Let's get back to the family. I found that Yuan could be Chinese. So I asked AI, could the name Yuan and Owain be derived? Yes, the names Owain and Yuan are related, as Yuan is an older Welsh spelling of Owain, a name derived from Latin Eugenius, meaning well-born, or noble. Tudor Hen ap Goronwy died a year before the end of the Yuan dynasty, proving that the name Yuan was of the same time period. But if Goronwy was Ethiopian, how do Chinese genes fit the picture? I have suspicion that Tudor ap Goronwy was not Goronwy's son at all, but the real Tudor, born of Tangwistl. Perhaps we'll never know. With Henry VII being the grandson of Owain, we need to establish his genes from both mother and father. My theory, which I've talked about in the House of Tudor House of York playlist, I'll link it here, is that Henry VII lineage is part Ghanaian. If Owain was at least part Chinese, could the Ghana genes of Henry, which I am sure about, have come from Owain's wife Catherine? Catherine of Valois. In my opinion, yes. For why? I'll play the short "This is not Louis XII." You'll not find this coin of Louis easily, as a variation has been made with a different nose. It's a subtle difference, but it matters. It's one of the reasons I'm feeling that this work I'm doing is actually kind of critical, as items are altered or removed from the internet. Some are just hidden away in private collections, and it is only when displayed on auction sites that they can be seen, discovered. Louis XII's nose has a distinct downward point with nostrils that curl upwards in a dart shape. So I'm really pleased to see that Catherine's father Charles VI had the same nose as Louis, as it is confirmation. Henry VII was half Ghanaian, and I have good reason to suspect that, based on some things I found earlier. I found a picture of this rare oak chest online, carved with the faces of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. It was probably their own personal wedding chest. Elizabeth appears to wear thick locks of hair. I wondered if the women of Ghana wore braids, and was shocked to find that they do wear thick rope locks. The conch shell necklace that Elizabeth of York wears on her wedding day, a symbol of prosperity, in reference to the homeland of French nobility. Perhaps she wore it in honor of her Ghana roots through her father, marrying a man, Henry, who also had the same heritage. This coin of Edward IV, her father, shows a distinctive wide nose and round shape of the eyes, with upper and lower eyelids semi-closed. As we see here, these eyes are the result of mixed genetics, as I discovered that the ancestors of Chinese migrants to Ghana were of Cantonese origin. The mouth is agape, a show of fierceness from the king. When I checked if this had any significance in Ghana, I was shocked to get these. It was a surprising moment for sure, because I then knew that I was on the right track and not making myself believe. The facial features minted on gold coins were deliberate. Here is a Ghanaian man with a typical Ghanaian nose. And in these coins of Henry VII, we can see that same nose shape where it tapers and flares at the nostrils. Plus, of course, the relaxed wavy hair of a black man, which we do not see in the portraits of Henry. But which image do you trust? The paintings, or the gold coins minted in his lifetime? Take a look at the crown which both Henry VII and VIII wear, father and son. At the front is a symbol you have most likely seen before, as part of the crown jewels if you've visited the Tower of London. But do you know where this type of cross originates? It is an Adinkra of the Akan people of Ghana, and it means good fortune. 5 inquiries all came back with Ghana. That cannot be coincidence. The kings of France were Ghanaian. Let's go back to Owain Tudor and the children who he fathered in union with the French Queen Catherine of Valois. So we've established that Owain possibly had Chinese genes and Catherine, Ghanaian. There's not a lot of imagery of her, but what is interesting is that upon her death she was mummified. Here's where it gets a bit confusing. Owain and Catherine had 4 children, and there was rumor that descendants were illegitimate, as Owain had conceived with her, as a lower servant to her royal household. It was suggested that she had an affair with him, then gave birth to these 4 babies in secret. How is this even possible? This story makes me think that historians were downplaying the nobility of Owain, and the Welsh, possibly Eastern genetics of the ancient kingdom of Gwynedd. Out of their 4 children, Owain and Catherine had 2 sons, Edmund and Jasper. When Catherine died, they were taken into the household of Henry VI, as half-brothers of the king, having the same mother. Jasper became Earl of Pembroke. Edmund became Earl of Richmond. After 7 years of marriage to Margaret of Anjou, Henry was still childless. The royal line was at risk, and the Tudor brothers were considered as possible heirs. There were concerns that while they were of French royal descent through Catherine, they had no blood relation to the English throne. But they were loyal to the English crown, and were effectively sent back to Wales only to suppress rebellions. However, there is a theory that the 2 brothers were not fathered by Owain but by a Beaufort, Edmund Beaufort, which would put the Welsh Tudor line out of the picture completely. It has been speculated that Catherine's marriage to the lowly Owain Tudor was contracted to cover up her politically dangerous relationship with Edmund Beaufort. In that case, is it possible that Edmund Tudor was not a Tudor at all, but was actually given the forename of his real father? Hopefully this tree will make things more clear. I know it can get confusing. It means that Margaret married her cousin's son and gave birth to Henry VII. She was just 12 years old. The strongest support for this theory is that the coats of arms of Edmund and Jasper are the English coats of arms, with no representation ever made for Owain's Wales. But actually, we do see symbology of Wales. In this half of Edmund Tudor's tomb plaque, there are birds called martlets, which represent the family de Valence. This is Aylmer de Valence, wearing the blue and white stripes of Cornwall, which back in the 1300s was connected with Wales. Pembroke Castle, home of Edmund Tudor, would have been administered with North Cornwall, the same. On the other side of the plaque are the blue and white stripes of the Beaufort family, symbolic in the Orthodox Church of Ethiopia. Are you starting to see the picture? Edmund died just a year later before Henry VII was born. Interestingly, Jasper, who lived to be an older man, was buried at Keynsham Abbey. Keen and Sham are words in Somali and Swahili, i.e. East Africa. The abbey is close to Bath, a place where Haile Selassie would later keep sacred items hidden, in a greenhouse in the garden of the house where he took refuge from persecution. Through her father, Margaret Beaufort was great-granddaughter of John of Gaunt. As such, she carried a claim to the throne because this was the line to Edward III. And I believe it was the purest claim to the throne, if we regard Kemet as the model of king and queendom, from which ceremony and civitas were continued in England. Am I saying that Margaret Beaufort was of East African descent? Possibly. This is a painting of Margaret Beaufort. And these are Amharic women of Ethiopia. I saw this image of a Sudanese journalist and thought that her face shape was much like Margaret's. The Yale is among the heraldic beasts used by the British royal family. It was used for the arms of the Duke of Bedford, and by England's House of Beaufort. Its connection with the British monarchy began with Henry VII. Henry Tudor's mother, Lady Margaret, was a Beaufort, and the heraldic legacy inherited by her and her son included the Yale. St. John's College is the second of Cambridge's institutions that owes its foundation to Lady Margaret Beaufort, and as a result its grand main entrance gate is emblazoned with a heraldic display of her arms with two carved Yales staring upwards at the figure of St. John above, who looked like this. I found these on an antiques website, Period Oak Antiques. The Yale is a mythical beast found in European mythology. Described as an antelope or goat-like creature with the tusks of a boar and large horns. But in reality it was an ibex, the species Walia of Ethiopia. As there doesn't exist any spotted ibex, my theory is that the Beauforts painted it with spots, as the Surma tribe do in Ethiopia, to their faces. The Beauforts are connected to the Bedfords, and they also have an antelope, with very straight horns, called an oryx. The only species with the straight type horns are the Bisa, which live in East Africa. Oryxes were extremely precious to Egyptians, due to the fact that they were associated with Seth, god of deserts. Or they just liked them because this is the land they wandered about upon, and the Egyptians treated them as pets. Remember when I said that Margaret was great-granddaughter of John of Gaunt? His line goes back to Edward III, who looked like this. Is it a coincidence that Edward III hairstyle and John of Gaunt's can be found in the Oromo tribe of Ethiopia? So let's look further into the Beaufort family. What can we find about their origin? Their titles are Dukes and Earls of Somerset, but was this a true location for them? John Beaufort is the first Earl of Somerset born 1373, also known as the Marquess of Somerset. An English nobleman and politician, he was the second son of John of Gaunt, who, by the way, was John of Ghent, Belgium. See how they changed the language? He was born in Montmorency, Beaufort in the Champagne region of France. Through the English noble house of Beaufort, named after the castle since demolished. Then another page on Wikipedia states, in reference to John, House of Montmorency was one of the oldest and most distinguished noble families in France. So in this one spot we have two noble houses. The family name Montmorency derived from their castle in the Pays de France, recorded in Latin as Mons Maurentiacus 993 AD. Maurentiacus, the name of the area surrounding the castle, meant estate of Maurentius, probably a Gallo-Roman landowner. They were Moors. But in a book A Help to English History 1709, it reads, Beaufort is a castle in the county of Anjou, in France, which came to the house of Lancaster, and was so much beloved by John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, fourth son of King Edward III, that he caused all his children which he had by Dame Catherine Swynford, to take the surname of Beaufort from the said castle, it being the place of their nativity. John Beaufort, the eldest son by Catherine, was afterwards created Earl of Somerset and Marquess of Dorset. His garter plate in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, shows the Yale and an eagle. Ostrich feathers either side, which are symbols used in Kemet or ancient Egypt. English crests don't usually display them so large. This has satisfied me that the Beauforts were indeed of East African descent via France. The Bedfords have another East African connection via Bedfordshire's ancient tribe the Kati or Chatti, which is Swahili. Kenya and Tanzania. Remember where I showed the oryx on the St. John's College Cambridge crest, symbol of the Bedford family? The East African oryx takes more finding, but occurs in suitable habitat across Kenya and Tanzania. Margaret was born in Bletsoe Castle, Bedfordshire in 1443. But this doesn't look much like a castle to me, and for her nobility, unlikely. Could this be a cover location? And if so, why? I couldn't find any information about her birthplace Blutso, but with some digging I found that she owned the manor house of Langport in Somerset. Immediately I knew that this was old land, because again, watched my video House of Lancaster House of York, Asian origins. Lang means dragon in Chinese. Lang comes from Lang. I had thought that she may have owned this land because of her husband Edmund Tudor, and his heritage. If Edmund's father wasn't Owain, then I'm not sure how she came to be in possession of it and from who. This is the All Saints Church in Langport with gargoyles of John Beaufort and Henry VII. Margaret's father and son. Notice the Akan hat of Henry, with the side flaps turned up. A Ghanaian hat but his mother's elegant face. John also has the same features. These lion gargoyles look similar to the guardian lions of China. What I didn't know is that the Somerset flag is a red dragon upon a yellow background. Pure and direct confirmation. Then I found a PDF about dragons and hunky punks in and around Somerset churches. Somerset is especially blessed with churches adorned with handsome, beautifully proportioned towers in the Perpendicular style. One design that stands out is that known as the Taunton or Quantock Tower, tall, square towers crowned with pinnacles, built in 3 distinct stages and adorned with buttresses, statues, and the local speciality, carved figures known as hunky punks. A profusion of these stone hunky punks can usually be spotted clambering up the corners of church towers and clinging to the string course below parapets. The name is derived, according to some, from hunkers as in hunkered down, squatting. 3 of the best examples are at Hewish Episcopi, Isle Abbots and Kingsbury Episcopi, towns about 10 miles apart in South Somerset. The tower at Isle Abbots has 8 hunky punks depicting a person playing the bagpipes, an oriental lion dog, a goat, a dragon, a Chinese dragon, a primitive dragon, a winged lion and a lion. I googled Taunton Quantock Tower. Nothing. Just a 1960s tower block. And then I saw this. It looked almost identical to Lalibela in Ethiopia. Look how it has the same banding and the same small windows. Does Quan come from Chinese? Quantock Tower. Perpendicular. The place name Hewish Episcopi piqued my curiosity. Scopus. Over, above. Scopus. One that watches. Huisha means revive, animate in Swahili. Isha also means evening prayer. So Hewish Episcopi, a place in South Somerset, means revived by the one who watches above, in Swahili. There's more. The 2 neighboring languages I have been using for translation are Swahili and Somali. Some and Som are prefixes of these languages and some and Som are variants of Somerset. Set of course being a word which comes from Kemet. Just outside of Langport is the village of Curry Revel. While watching a video to learn about the Kush civilization, the sister dynasty to Egypt, I heard the words El Kuru. My mind went to Curry, and I thought there may be a connection. I found that El Kuru means the chariot. Could Curry have once been Kuru? It is a word which comes from India, so I looked up its meaning. To revolve, circle, spin. But also, curry. In Hindi it translates to curry. Of course the textbooks tell us the word comes from the Celtic word crwy. What a Kush place name could be doing next to Chinese Langport, I don't know. Take a look at these towers which lay alongside Margaret on her tomb. Notice the stepped pyramids on the ends. Was this a real tower? That stood somewhere in the Somerset countryside? Is it possible that foundations can be constructed in an upside-down pyramid? Perhaps as some kind of channel point to power into the ley lines. Margaret owned Wimborne Grammar School in Dorset, and here we can see stepped pyramids on top of the gateposts. This is the Wellington Monument in Somerset. A unique 3-sided obelisk which, so the story goes, was designed after the tip of the bayonet used by the Duke of Wellington's army. The base of the monument is coincidentally the same as the temple of Ednifed in Meroe. In looking at the tomb towers again, I noticed that they appear quite oriental, and I'm sure I have seen similar towers in Chinese paintings. Oh, what is this? Looks just like the Quantock Tower, which I had thought was Ethiopian in origin, like Lalibela. Am I now finding the same architecture in China? Most of the ancient towers across the English landscape have been dismantled, and so it seems probable that the Beaufort Tower is long gone. Or lang gone. The Nilotic people are indigenous people in Eastern Africa known for their distinct physical characteristics, culture, and language, and in the late 20th century they numbered at almost 7 million. The name comes from the area in which they are based, which is mainly around the Upper Nile River and its tributaries, the longest river in Africa. The Nilotes are agro-pastoral people that primarily follow Christianity and traditional faiths, and have no centralized system of government, but instead a kinship-based political structure. They started in the Upper Nile River over 3,000 years ago and gradually spread south into other countries including South Sudan, northern Uganda, western Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tanzania. The ancient kingdom of Kush was a powerful civilization in northeast Africa that interacted extensively with Egypt. The term is used in the Bible to refer to the land and people south of Egypt, with some biblical interpretations connecting it to parts of modern-day Sudan and Ethiopia. Margaret has high cheekbones and high forehead as phenotypical of Somalians and Kushites. She has a slim up-pointed nose. Margaret's mother also has these features. Even though the nose has been destroyed, I can guess that it was upturned. I notice that her chin is rounded, the same as Henry in this painting. Could it have looked in real life something like this? There are many depictions of Henry with a dimple in his chin, as we can see strongly on this coin. So I think he looked a lot like his mother. Perhaps one of the best clues to Margaret's heritage is in discovering where her headdress originates. Was it something tribal? Or did she fashion it for herself? I found the answer. While looking up images of Chinese hats and costume, I came across this website that specializes in Taoist items and traditional garments. Was Margaret a Taoist? Taoism or Taoism is a philosophical and religious tradition indigenous to China, emphasizing harmony with the Tao. With a range of meaning in Chinese philosophy, translations of Tao include way, road, path, or technique. Generally understood in the Taoist sense as an enigmatic process of transformation ultimately underlying reality. Taoist thought has informed the development of various practices within the Taoist tradition, ideation of mathematics and beyond, including forms of meditation, astrology, qigong, feng shui, and internal alchemy. A common goal of Taoist practice is self-cultivation, a deeper appreciation of the Tao, and more harmonious existence. Taoist ethics vary, but generally emphasize such virtues as effortless action, naturalness, simplicity, and the three treasures of compassion, frugality, and humility. I haven't seen the steeple hood that she wears anywhere else, and believe me, I've looked. Then, later, I came across a brass rubbing which was sold on an auction site. With a couple, in unusual dress for the medieval period they belong. I recognized them to be Margaret and possibly Edmund. They have large beads hanging from their sleeve and belt. Surely this will be easy to find in Buddhist Tibet. My guess was correct. I wanted to know why a woman of Ethiopian heritage would ascribe to Buddhism or Taoism. What's the connection here? On the website Ancient Origins, Buddhism in Ancient Egypt and Meroe, beliefs revealed through ancient script. Did Buddhism exist in Upper Egypt and the Lower Meroitic Empire? The answer appears to be yes. It was in Memphis that English Egyptologist and archaeologist W. M. Flinders Petrie found evidence of Buddhist colony. We have covered the early Tudors of Wales, Edmund Tudor's union with Margaret Beaufort, thus Henry VII possible Eastern genes, and Margaret Beaufort's evident East African genes and legacy in England. But let's now move on and look at some coins of Henry VIII, and his siblings Margaret, Mary Rose and Arthur. And a reminder of my theory, Henry VII as Kushite, distant Ghana. Elizabeth of York as Ghanaian, distant Nigeria, Zulu. Please watch my playlist to hear my reasoning. But how did Henry VIII truly appear? Here is a House of Tudor family tree I produced. This coin shows somewhat of a Ghanaian nose and eyes, a small mouth, and the large character of a Nigerian man. There does appear to be a rounded chin of both Henry VII and VIII. I also want to point out these mint marks on Henry VII coin. Dragon, dragon, lion, dog. When I found this medallion of Henry VIII's beloved sister Mary Rose, I was shocked. It makes a rare show on a website called scepterofjudah.org. The National Portrait Gallery of Scotland displays a counterfeit copy. Although claimed to be Mary Queen of Scots, and if so, we have no true depiction of Mary Rose. This carved oak round was displayed in Stirling Castle before curators changed it for a counterfeit copy. Features are not so clear on this depiction of Margaret Tudor. As we come towards the end of this video, it seems fitting to highlight Arthur Tudor, the son who died at the age of 15, brother to Henry VIII. In this image are the 3 ostrich feathers first used in England by Edward III. 3 feathers. In ancient Egypt most commonly refers to the hem crown, a ceremonial headdress worn by pharaohs, or the atef crown, associated with the god Osiris. It can also refer to the individual feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, which was used to weigh the heart of the deceased in the afterlife. But a more fitting item can be found in Meroe, Sudan. Wait. Some? Mary? It seems certain, to me at least, that Margaret Beaufort through her mother's line was Kushite. Her facial features carried through into Henry VII. The kingdom of Kush was at Meroe, to the south of Egypt. Tudor paintings have date markings which are literally the same as Meroitic script. The ancient kings and queens of Wales appear to be dark-skinned and wearing the color of the red dragon, a symbol shared with China. The kingdom of Gwynedd was ruled by Kundag, and I found that Edag is a monastic village in Ethiopia. Kun may mean attractive, chief, leader in Welsh, or village in Buddhist Chinese, the Tibet region. We also have Buddhist and Taoist connection in the costume of Margaret Beaufort and her spouse Edmund Tudor. The Tudors were descended from Ednifed Fikin, whose grandsons were called the Wirian of Eden. Eden, abundant. Fide, in Swahili. I found that Eden was a city near the port of Djibouti, Ethiopia, in the land of the Queen of Sheba. Ednifed had a child with a Chinese woman and an Ethiopian woman, both who he named Tudor. Tudor the Elder is claimed to be the grandfather of Owain, who was grandfather of Henry VII. Although there is claim that Henry VII's true grandfather was Edmund Beaufort. Either way, one thing is clear. The blue and white stripes tell us that this lineage was legitimate. It puts ancient Kemet and Kush at the heart of England. These discoveries have astounded me as there are just too many direct connections to dismiss. Oh, and one last thing. I found the probable origin of the name Tudor. A user from Ethiopia says the name Chuador is of Amharic origin and means gift of God. Thank you for staying through to the end of the presentation. If you want to learn more about the events that led to Henry VII taking the throne, I highly recommend the documentary drama, Royal Bastards: Rise of the Tudors. Please share my channel. And come back soon.